Sometimes you don't have enough legendary commander sculptures to expertise a commander that you want to use. So then the question becomes, can you still use them? Are they still viable in the open field for PvP without their expertise skill? Well, for some commanders, the answer is absolutely not. For other commanders, the answer is maybe, kind of. So today we're going to dive into the best budget builds for some of the latest commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. And we'll talk about whether or not this is even viable in 2025 anymore. And by budget build, I mean 5511 or 5551 equivalent builds for their skill distribution. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I'm a sponsored partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms. So if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing down below and dropping a thumbs up. And near the end of the video, I'm going to share with you guys where I've been, because some of you might be wondering, where are the Omniarch uploads? Why have they been so infrequent? I'll talk about that later in the video, but first let's jump in here and talk about 5511 versus 5551 versus expertising a commander. Now, if you're new to the game and you don't know what these terms actually are, when I say 5511, I'm referring to the level of the skills from left to right. If we take a look at my Thutmose, this is 5552. If we look at my Pyrrhus, he is 5521. And of course, expertise is when you unlock the expertise for the commander. I'm sure you guys know that. You read everything on the screen, right? You read all the skills. Okay, good. So when we compare a commander at 5511 versus 5551 versus expertise, isn't the expertise commander always better? The answer is yes. Obviously, if you have more skill points, the commander is better, but that doesn't really paint the complete picture, because I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people don't have a lot of legendary commander sculptures. And even here, this might look like, oh, he's got so many sculptures, but really I can't even expertise two commanders here, right? I can get one and then a partial investment in another. And so when you have something as rare as legendary commander sculptures, it's not that helpful to say, oh, well, commanders are best at expertise, so just use expertise commanders. It's like, okay, well, yeah, in a perfect world, right? Like, by the same vein, just use iconic tier 5 everything. Just have a special talent on all your gear. Like, what are you doing? It's suboptimal to not have perfect gear. Why are you playing with imperfect gear, Omniarch? It's because I don't have enough materials or blueprints. Okay, and so some people are in a position where they don't have enough sculptures to expertise a commander. So then we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, what's the difference between 5511 and 5551? Well, the answer is 5511 costs 190 legendary commander sculptures and 5551 costs 380 legendary commander sculptures versus a full expertise, which is 690. So as you can see, it gets exponentially more expensive to invest in a commander. And so really, if we can just pick one skill on any given commander that we don't care that much about, we can save hundreds of legendary commander sculptures, and that would be really good value. And especially if we could run them at 5511, that'll save you 500 legendary commander sculptures. That's insane. Here's the thing though, we are going into 2026. You might even be watching this in 2026. And because of power creep over the last couple of years, it's really challenging, basically impossible to find a commander, in my opinion, that is open field viable at 5511. I just don't think it really exists anymore. The thing about these new commanders, like for a lot of open field commanders, the active skill will be some damage, whether it's smite, skill, or combo damage. The second skill will usually be some amount of stats and march speed, maybe a couple of other things sprinkled in, and then a lot of the fancy mechanics typically land on the third, fourth, and expertise skills. So really at 5511, all you're ever going to be getting from these commanders is the damage factor and the stats, which are non-negotiable. But a lot of what you want from these new commanders is all the fancy stuff that comes on the later skills, right? So in my opinion, I think the days of 5511 are kind of over. Even if you wanted to run a budget build, it's like you're probably better off not even running that commander in the field at 5511, at least in the end game, right? If we're talking about kvk 1, kvk 2, or even maybe kvk 3, you might be able to make an argument that like you can squeeze together something from some of these earlier commanders, but really at the end game, 5511 to me just does not seem viable anymore. Now, in the same vein as that, let's talk about 5551 or an equivalent number of sculptures, right? So when I say 5551, an equivalent number of sculptures to that would be something like 5515, right? Like we have here with my Nebu 5515. I skipped this third skill because all this does is things during a rally, which I'm never rallying, especially not with Nebu, so I never need this. So I get all the AoE damage, I get all the stats, and I get all the cool stuff on the fourth skill, and I just saved a bunch of sculptures. So then the question becomes, okay, well, are there commanders out there that are viable at 5515 or 5551? If effectively saving you 300 sculptures. And I think, you know, like I said at the beginning, is expertise better? Always, right? It's always better, obviously. Should you run a commander at 5551 or 5515? Probably not. Like, probably not. If you can get away with it, I probably wouldn't do it. But here's one thing that we have to remember, right? And I think this is what a lot of high-end players forget about, you know, these budget build, free-to-play friendly videos, 5551 videos, things like that. This is a video game. And so if we sit here and say, well, actually it's suboptimal to run anything that's not expertise, it's like, yeah, yes, of course, but like, it's also a video game, right? And so like, if it comes down to it, it's like, do you want to play? Yes. Okay. Well, is there a new commander that you've got some partial investment in and maybe you want to try them out? Like, yeah, like, just, it's a video game. Like, if you want to try it, have fun, right? Like, within reason. Don't waste all your resources healing your hospital if it's not working, right? Like, if you're getting stomped out, stop doing it, right? So all that to say, I think the commanders we talk about in this video, can you use them at 5551 or 5515? I think you can, even though it will be suboptimal. You will have to be very careful. I just want to make sure that I preface all the information in this video with this statement, because I don't want to confuse anybody. Okay, you are running a suboptimal march, and maybe it will work out for you, maybe it will not. With all the disclaimers out of the way, let's finally jump into the list of commanders that I want to talk about today. Actually, let's start with one of my favorite 5551 commanders in Rise of Kingdoms right now, and that is King Arthur. And this is because his active skill is a really powerful 3-target AoE. Second skill gives you a tremendous amount of stats and march speed for cavalry. The third skill gives you 30% bonus damage to either skill or combo damage depending on how you're using him, and the fourth skill has a really nice rage reduction and a march speed reduction. But guess what, march speed debuffs aren't the best debuffs in the game. I mean, there's definitely a time and place. If people are trying to run away and you could snare them with a march speed debuff, fantastic, right? But really, it's not going to move the needle a ton. Same thing with rage reduction. It is a big cooldown. I like the rage reduction, but it's not a game changer, right? The biggest thing you're missing out on is actually the expertise, which is quite good, right? You are missing out on a very good expertise, but point for point at 5551, I think King Arthur is phenomenal and definitely something that you could flex into a budget build. If you're about to go into war, you don't have enough sculptures to max him, but you want to use him, I think he's a great choice. And he's super flexible because not only does he deal combo damage, he also can deal skill damage, right? And so if you find yourself in a KVK where there's artifacts and you can convert him into, I don't know, a second archer march or something along those lines, right? Like, you can get creative, flex him in somewhere as a budget commander or whatever the case might be. Or, you know, even within cavalry himself, he can be behind a Hua that you've had on your account forever and deal skill damage, or he can be in front of an Achilles. Right now, if you're running Achilles, you probably have enough sculptures to max him, but you get my point. He's super flexible, and I do think he's very strong at a budget build of 5551. Next, let's talk about Bai Chi, because I do think that he finds himself in a similar position to King Arthur. The only downside is which skill you want to skip. The benefit with King Arthur is skipping this fourth skill is really easy, because when it comes to skill locking, you can easily just click this button here and drag the slider down, and now you will never upgrade your fourth skill. It is a guaranteed situation of getting 5551. The problem with Bai Chi is that you love his active skill. It's lots of AoE damage. Second skill gives you a ton of attack, a little bit of health and some march speed. The third skill, however, is where things get a little less interesting. Now, not to say that the skill is bad, but it's a small amount of damage factor that is very conditional, right? First of all, you have to spend malice stacks in order to deal this damage, right? Which you get when you use an active skill. That's great. But first of all, if you don't have enough malice stacks, you're not going to deal this damage. Second of all, if your number of malice stacks is lower than the target's percentage of units remaining, you're also not going to deal damage here, right? So there's many ways where this will rapid fire damage, and then other times you just won't deal damage with this at all, right? So that being said, the fourth skill here gives you a flat 10% bonus to normal damage, which is your, you know, the white numbers every turn, and also your smite damage, right? Plus at 5, this gives you a 5% bonus to smite damage, which stacks as you're losing units, right? So between these two skills, personally, I think it's safer to just get the flat 10% normal damage bonus than to try to get the max value out of this. The downside is that you can't guarantee get all 5 skills in this last skill here, so you might have to use a skill reset, or you just kind of let it fall how it falls, you know, 5-5-3-3, something like that. That would be fine. And keep in mind, even at 1, this skill is still going to deal smite damage factor. It's still going to do something. You're still going to gain the 10 stacks of malice every active skill, so it's not like this skill does nothing. It's just not as strong as it could be. But overall, I think Bai Chi, if you wanted to squeeze a little bit of value out of him without maxing him out, I think 5515 is fantastic. And then if we take a look at the expertise, I don't really love this expertise, to be honest with you. Okay, first of all, after wounding 400,000 enemy units, you gain a 5% bonus to normal damage. That's negligible. Throw that in the garbage. All right, the rest of the expertise just gives you damage bonuses for a certain number of seconds, but it's as you're losing units, right? And so it's a temporary band-aid over the fact that you're about to die, right? So it's like, is it something? Yes, but it's just not the best expertise in the world. So I think Baichi at 5515, at least temporarily, is something that you can try. Next, I wanted to talk about Emperor Qin, but here's the thing. Emperor Qin is one of those commanders where the way that they have designed his skills, there's really not a skill here that is worth skipping because all of them sort of rely on the rest of them, right? The active skill consumes rage instead of having a rage requirement. The second skill is a big way in which he does consume that rage, plus he gets stats here. Third skill, when he's not expertise, again, is a way to spend rage and also gives you the Eternal Emperor effect. Fourth skill gives you rage to start the combat with. It's just everything here kind of builds on everything else. The only skill that might be somewhere you could sacrifice points would be the active skill, which you just don't ever want to do. Like you just have to expertise him. Okay, unfortunately you have to expertise Emperor Qin, but great news, he's the best commander in the game, so he is the one that you would want to expertise out of anybody anyway. Next, let's talk about Achilles. Is this a commander that you can run at 5551 or 5515? Well, let's take a look, and I'm switching to an unexpertise version so we can actually see how his skills progress, particularly his third one. Active skill, circular AoE, fantastic, we love it. Second skill, like I said earlier, bunch of stats and march speed, non-negotiable, you want this. Third skill, you take between 1 to 5% less damage, okay, on the map. That's just all damage, and all incoming skill combo and counterattack damage is reduced by either 5, 6, 7, 8 or 10%, and whenever you reduce a certain number of damage factor, you can cast his active skill again. The fourth skill gives you more normal damage dealt, and when you cast your active skill, you have a bonus to rage gain speed and cavalry attack for 10 seconds. You can stack it 2 times. Okay, between the third and fourth skills, which one would you rather have at 1? Well, it's a little tricky actually, because the first part of the third skill is not that impactful, but the second part of the third skill is actually quite good. However, on the fourth skill, the top part of the skill is actually quite good. 10% normal damage just across the board for everybody is great. The bottom part of the skill is not that good, right? 20% rage gain speed, and that's if you've stacked it and you've been, staying in the battle. 20% attack, really, I don't care that much for the stackable attack and rage gain speed. It's a little conditional, and you need to cast twice in order to get the max benefit, and if you go out of combat then you lose it, you got to stack it again. It's like, oh man, but the 10% normal damage is really good. So here's another one of those situations where it's like, personally, if I had to choose, I'd probably get the fourth skill, right? Because at least with the third skill, you are still getting half the value out of the damage reduction for skill combo and counterattack, right? It goes from 5 to 10%. You're still getting half the value there, and you will still eventually cast your active skill again, so you do still get that part of the skill. The top part doesn't matter that much, so at least just having this unlocked does still do something. And really the reason I would prefer the fourth skill is because it's just 10% normal damage across the board. It's just the safest thing. There's no conditions, there's no proccing, there's no stacking, there's no whatever. It's just you get it all the time. I'd rather have 10% than 2%, so that's how I'm thinking with Achilles. Of course, you are also missing out on his expertise by running him at 5515. So again, it's not optimal to run him at 5515, but if you were going to, I guess you could try. And again, just like with Baichi, if the skills fall how they fall, if they get 5533 or something, like, I guess that's okay too. Moving on from Achilles, let's talk about Hector. And Hector is actually a really interesting contender for a budget build, and here's why. Hector is very versatile. As a leadership commander, you can flex him anywhere and he will adapt to whoever he is with. So the active skill, obviously you want this at 5. This is going to deal a bunch of damage, and the amount of damage depends on what the troop type actually is. Second skill is raw stats, 20% march speed, 10% health, 30% defense, very tanky stuff here. We love this for pretty much anybody that he's with. I was going to say except for maybe infantry because they already have a ton of defense, but they love the 20% march speed too. So it's like, really, the second skill is great for pretty much anybody, especially calves, I would say. But the third and fourth skills are where we can start to make some choices, right? The third skill, I know there's like a wall of text here, which is annoying, but he takes between 5 and 10% less normal damage, okay, just across the board. And then if he's with infantry or cavalry, there is a chance to trigger some other buff, right? Whether you're increasing your smite damage or you're dealing extra combo damage, but you can see how this scales at the very bottom, right? The fourth skill, however, if you're infantry or cavalry, you have a 50% chance, no matter what, whether this is at 1 or 5, you have a 50% chance to gain between 5 and 20% normal damage, or if it's leadership or archers, it's going to be skill damage, okay, 10 to 30% skill damage for the next 5 seconds. There is a long 7-second cooldown, but what you'll see here is that the scaling here for the fourth skill is actually way better, right? 5 to 20%, that's a 4x, whereas if we look at the third skill, the normal damage reduction goes from 5 to 10, that's only a 2x. Same thing with the damage increase here, that's a 3x for the smite damage or a 2x for the combo damage, right? So really, like, I would actually be okay with skipping the third skill, because even just unlocking this, you're still going to get 5% less normal damage, you're still going to deal that combo damage with calves. It's not going to be 400, it'll be 200, but it's still something, right? And the chance of it happening is still the same, so that's really nice. Meanwhile, with the fourth skill, again, the scaling is just much better. I'd much rather have 20% normal damage than 5% normal damage. It's kind of a no-brainer to me. Again, with 5515, it's going to be tricky to get that, so depending on how the skills land, you might just want to leave it. Neither of these skills are bad, right? I just think for me, I would prefer the fourth skill in the open field. Next, let's talk about Gangnam Chan. This is the latest and greatest, or maybe not the greatest, but definitely the latest cavalry commander in Rise of Kingdoms, and he's up there with the greatest, definitely. I'm not trying to throw shade or anything like that, okay? I've been using him this KVK. He's very tanky. I really like how long he keeps Achilles on the battlefield. Very good stuff there. Active skill, if he's not expertised, is 2800 damage factor to one target, and you get 10% of stats. Second skill is where you get your damage reduction and your defense and march speed. You need this. Okay, so the first two skills are mandatory. Third skill, you deal 15% more normal damage, and when you deal combo damage, you recover units, right? So this is healing. It's a special type of healing where you don't get more sev wounds. Really nice stuff there. The fourth skill, you have a 30% chance to reduce the target's defense by 40% for 5 seconds. You can trigger up to 3 times a single second, which is great. Between these two skills, you really can't go wrong, but I'm going to point you towards the third one, and here's why. The fourth one is a chance to trigger, right? It's a 30% chance. Okay, so 70% of the time, this is not doing anything, okay? And when you say it like that and it really sinks in, it's like, man, it's tough to point you in that direction, right? Second of all, it's a 5-second cooldown. That's crazy. That's definitely on the longer side for a cooldown. And third of all, even with this skill just at 1, you still get a 20% defense reduction to up to 3 targets with the same trigger chance, right? So you still get half the value of this skill just by unlocking it. Meanwhile, the third skill, you go from 5 to 15% more normal damage. And by the way, like I said before, this is the white numbers every turn, and it's your combo damage on your active skill with him or Achilles or with King Arthur, whoever you're pairing him with. Plus, this is the skill that's going to give you the most amount of healing, which is what he's kind of known for and what he does, right? So a 5551 Gangnam Chan seems pretty good to me. You are missing out on the expertise, which means you're going to miss out on 200 damage factor and 10% of stats, and the healing factor from the active skill only matters if he's primary. You don't need to use him as primary. In fact, I don't love using single target damage commanders as primary anyway, especially if you're doing in and out combat. I mean, it's always kind of been so optimal. It's not as bad now because battles aren't as fast as they were like a year and a half ago, but either way, 5551 with Gangnam Chan I think is solid. And that's going to do it for the budget build commanders in Rise of Kingdoms at the very end of 2025 going into 2026. Let's quickly talk about where I've been, right? I feel like the uploads have been very infrequent lately. I currently have a fever right now as you're watching, right in this very moment. I don't know if you could tell throughout this video, but this sucks, and I've had it since Christmas Eve. Okay, so I have been struggling. It is actually awful. There's also lots of other external factors, the holidays, other things going on. Not going to dive deep into those, but things that have just been affecting my schedule. All of that has played a factor in uploading videos. And the final component is I also run 2 channels now, right? So up until getting sick, right? I haven't posted on that channel since I got sick either. Up until getting sick, I have actually been posting very regularly, but it's just across 2 channels. So I am a one-man show struggling to put all of this together around the holidays, around getting sick, around life, and that's what's going on. That's pretty much it. Nothing crazy or anything like that, and things will go back to normal very soon. I'm really hoping tomorrow I feel better, because this is just dragging on for too long and I feel awful. So I'm gonna end the video now. I'm gonna edit this as quick as I can, and then I'm gonna lay back down. Hopefully tomorrow I feel better. But guys, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, drop a thumbs up down below. Really helps out the channel a ton. If you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time that I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video, and comment down below your favorite budget build commanders in 2025 going into 2026. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.